Hello, stars. Welcome or welcome back. My name is Aster. If you are new here, first off, let me just give you a rundown of what's been going on lately. So, I am a reader and a writer. My content always revolves around that in some way. Lately, I have been working on the book that I'm hoping will be my debut novel. If you want to know more about that novel, you can go into, I have a playlist. I have two actually, one for writing vlogs and one for Project New World. Those two will have all of the content for this story. But I just finished draft 3 and I have currently sent it out to my beta readers. So I'm waiting to get feedback from them before I start doing anything else with my novel. But instead, today we're going to do something else. If you guys don't know, I really like to write by hand. Project New World was entirely written by hand as well. This is the first draft. Also, if you want to know more about Project New World, aka Sadriel is the name of the book, I link a video at the end of this video that kind of tells you the most about it. For today, we are going to plan or plot a new book. And I'm basically just going to bring you guys along and show you how I plot and how I figure out what I want to happen in my novels. I have the novel in mind. Let's start off with, how on earth do you create how do you create a story? Like the idea for a story. I think, personally, I'm a little weird in this sense because I can get a story idea from anything. I'll give you some examples. When I first started this channel 2 years ago, I only posted for the NaNoWriMo. And during NaNoWriMo, I worked on a story called Project Stone. The inspiration for that story came from, you guessed it, a stone. Not exactly a stone though, it was a resin craft on YouTube. I saw that, I was like, that's pretty. I want that to be something special. And I made a story based off of it. I think the weirdest one for me personally was I had gone on a cruise with my family and we were somewhere that wasn't my country. And went into this little corner restaurant and they had these like checkered marble floors, fake marble, but you know. And I was like, I kind of like the vibe of this restaurant. It was the floors I was obsessed with. The floors created the story. I created a story based off of a restaurant's floor. So literally, my stories can come from anything. I look at something and I'm like, I kind of like that. And I start thinking of what use could it do? In what situation could that be important? And to be fair, the floors was not that important. It was like they come in literally the first chapter where the character meets the other characters for the first time. For this one, I don't even remember how I started this story or how I what the inspiration for it was, the story that we'll be working on today. But it has been in my head for so long. The only reason I haven't written it yet was because I felt like it needed a lot more detail than I was capable of doing at the time. But now I feel confident in my writing and I feel like I can do it. So I'm trying it out. So basically, this story, I have no idea what I want to happen. I just found a concept of something, my main character, and I wanted to create a story on that. I was like, that's so cool. I need a story about that. And that's pirates. This is a pirate story, and I am so excited for it. Something that makes it a bit different. It's a pirate necromancer. If you don't know what a necromancer is, it is someone who can raise the dead and use them as soldiers. I thought that was pretty cool, and just the descriptive writing you would need to have an army of the undead would be pretty dang hard. So I have put it off for a very long time, and I knew nothing about the story except for how I wanted it to start. And so this first page is that story. I ripped it a little bit, but it's okay. Sorry. So first off, let's title my page for what story it is. Right now, I am just calling this story Something About the Sea because I don't know what I want to name it yet. Actually, I think I do know what I want to name it, but I'm not telling you yet. So, let's go over what I had written before. Basically, the very early stages of planning for me are just asking questions. It's word vomit. I write everything I want down, like everything I know I want to happen, and then I start asking why. Like, question everything. You're like, you know you want this to happen, but why does it need to happen? What leads to it? Why should that happen? The first thing I wrote here was what I wanted, what I knew that I wanted the beginning of the story to be like. I did change that though. To talk more specifically about this story and what it's actually about, obviously I don't know what it's about because I haven't plotted it yet, but what I know about this book was I have the main character Evelyn, who is the pirate necromancer, but I had to, build on to that a little bit. I actually just remembered what started this story. It was a necklace. So I got a necklace that's basically like merch or based off of One Piece, the pirate anime. And so I'm like, I love that. And so in this book, you need a certain relic to summon the dead. And that's what I based the relic off of, was that necklace. Evelyn starts as a slave, which is legal at the beginning of this novel. All I knew was that I wanted this character to, go find her crew, find her people after being a slave her entire life. She was sold into slavery when she was 6. I wanted her to be young, but old enough to kind of remember her mother, which her mother got arrested at the time. So they arrested her mother and then sold the kid off to slavery. That was pretty much all I knew of this novel, was that this character who had been at the lowest had everything taken from her, and suddenly she had it all, and so she wasn't afraid to do anything because she knew what the lowest was. Originally, the story was going to be like her finding her crew, and like you get to see the first interactions between all of them. But even with just this page of writing, I figured out that is going to be a very slow book because there's quite a few characters in her crew. 5 or 6, maybe 7, I think. And so it's going to take a really long time just to get all of them together. So let me break down the actual idea for you. In this story, there's like this relic that belongs to the king of the pirates. He's the king because he has this undead army that he can't be rivaled. It's a dead army. And so he went missing like 16 years ago. I think that's what I planned. And this relic that can summon the dead can only be used by those of the same bloodline. So even if somebody stole it, it'd be useless to them except for like taking away his army. But he had a fleet of pirates, so it didn't really matter. Anyways, that's backstory that we don't get into. Not yet, at least. So when this sailor, or this, what do I call it? I call it in my book sailor pirates. Basically, people have made a pact with the Navy to not be attacked, and that can sell their treasure to nobles. And Evelyn gets talking with this sailor pirate, and she has this relic. She's like, oh yeah, this is the relic from the king of the pirates who went missing. It's supposed to be able to summon the dead. And like as a joke, she asks to like use it. So she does, and she actually summons the dead. So basically the thing is, she went from slave up to pirate princess, and that's where I wanted the novel to start. But again, it may be more of a prologue kind of thing, considering I don't want her to start with getting the crew. Yeah, so I had originally, the novel was supposed to start with her finding her crew, but it would make more sense to already have her crew. That's literally what I wrote down. And then I'm like, maybe it could be like this instead. Maybe it could start like this instead. I gave a alternative. And then next thing was I would need to come up with plot points that would reveal the past for all of them, because I had created like a past for all these characters. I've thought a lot about this, but this is the first time actually starting to write it down. And then I knew a big theme that I wanted was for them, like found family, for them to be better together. But I wanted Evelyn's flaw to be that she has trouble believing that they're a team, that she's a part of that. She was very used to not having anything, to for nothing to ever actually be hers. And then after figuring out that I wanted her to struggle to view herself as a part of the team, I was like, oh, maybe this can be the turning point for her. Maybe this could be her character arc. And I just so happened to be able to tie that into the point I made earlier, because I wrote that down. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how the novel starts. And so I was thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, her character arc will probably tie into that, because it'll set off the whole novel. I'm like, yeah, that would work. So I think I have a solid base for how I want it to start and how I want it to end. But now we're into the middle bits, which is the hardest bits. And now we can actually start doing this. So, again, just what I do is word vomit. So just questions. I gotta ask a lot of questions. And so this novel has been very hard because I've been thinking about it lots, but I could never think of a plot or a story that I thought did it justice. Guess what should the first question be? I'm just gonna start with something basic to get my brain thinking. I do write this all down, so yeah. How do I want the story to start? That's gonna be the first question. Do I want the story to start? And so I had already, during the first just initial brain vomit, word vomit, I'd written that down, so I already kind of know the answer to that. Minus the prologue, which is what I already told you. First plot point would be something like this. So, this first point, I want them to be, that's what they're trying to do for the rest of the novel. I want them to set that up. So, in order to do that, they have to fail. Next question would be, why do they fail? And that's a good question. So, in this novel, they're trying to get something. They want to hold on to something. So, that would, I guess, mean that somebody else got it. But who? So, I have, obviously, the Navy, which is the big enemy against them. But there are obviously also other pirates out there, and these relics are big things, obviously very powerful. The thing that lets Evelyn create the Army of the Dead is a relic in itself, so they're pretty powerful. If you get one of these, you pretty much rule your part of the sea. So it would make sense for another pirate to get it, but it would also make quite a lot of sense for the Navy to want to get their hands on them, to control them, because as the Navy rules the land, they are nervous about those who rule the sea, because to get from land to land, you need to cross the sea. There's no airplanes in this world. I'm setting that out right now. But who do I want to be the enemy? Another pirate crew or the Navy? That's the big question. I think I'm gonna do it like this. These can obviously all be changed later on, but this is just how I feel like I should do it now. Okay, so now that sets up the first point of the book. Again, I'm just planning it. I'm not logically thinking oh, how I'm gonna write it yet. This is just plot point to plot point. It's not connected quite yet. But now that I asked the why, I asked the what happens now? Or I think the better question is, how does she react? And this is a very character-driven novel. How does she react? And obviously I want this to be out of character for how her crew knows her to be. Do I want this question or not? Of course, you also gotta ask the right questions. You can ask a lot of questions, but there's no point to it if there's not the right questions. I'm writing really big right now. I don't think I want that question. Never mind, I'm crossing that out. Okay, instead of that question, I'm gonna ask what happens then? Or what happens after, And so obviously there are questions that I ask that I'm like, I don't think that actually really matters too much. And how does she react? It kind of also plays into what happens next. Like, it's kind of the same question, but it's a bigger scope. And right now, that's what's important, is finding the bigger scope of the novel, what I want it to generally look like, and not looking too close into it. I think I'll do this. And so sometimes the answers I write aren't the answers I want. Like, sometimes I write it and then I think, I'm like, actually, I don't really like how that turned out. I can either cross that out or literally just in the next sentence be like, or they can do this, which is, I do that a lot. Right, so if I do that, that would be hard. So that question's answered, but I don't think we're ready for that question yet. I think we need to go back. So why do they fail? Yes, somebody else gets it, but I quite literally just said she's an army of the undead. So how, with an army of the undead and her own crew, does she lose to somebody else? That would technically mean that crew had to be better than them, right? So how does that happen? I did have another plot point for how I wanted it to end. I think I'm going to tie that in now, set up the problem right away. So the next question, how does she lose it to them? So yeah, again, I already think I have the answer for this, but it's important to really write all these out, because even if sometimes I don't even look back on these, sometimes it just helps me get them in my head. And so if you write them out, sometimes it also, you end with a thought and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that can turn into another plot point. But it's very easy to forget things when you just think them in your head. So I answered the question, but it's still kind of iffy, so I explain it a bit more. Because I already know, like, oh, I want to know how. I know how I want that to happen, so I should explain it on the page so I don't forget it. Because people are very forgetful, me specifically. And so I think there's a few ways I can do this, but I had set up earlier that I want a rival crew to be involved. Not a crew that technically goes against Evelyn and her crew, but that kind of likes to piss them off. The love interest is the captain of that crew, and so it's kind of like a rivals to lovers kind of thing. If I even make them lovers, I don't even know. So I'm gonna have him, because again, this is a why do they fail, or an add-on to the why do they fail question. And so somebody else gets the relic, and so I'm like, how does that happen? I'm thinking maybe someone was able to interrupt her in a way that forced the undead to go back down. And so I'm like, who would that be? Because if it was someone from the enemy, their enemy couldn't leave without that other person, so it should be somebody else. I'm thinking maybe it's the rival. Maybe the rival doesn't want them to get more powerful, so they step in between, which would also give them a chance to have some banter, which would be good, and introduce right away the relationship between those two, and not only in her crew, and for a moment for her to get pissed, which is lovely. I love doing that. But let me just expand on that a little bit more. Okay, so I'm feeling good now after answering that. Now I think it's time for a then what, or what happens next. Which, again, I already answered earlier, but now I'm adding on to what I added before. So I'm answering the question again. Sometimes questions need to be answered more than once. And I think I already know, like, how that sets up. I want Evelyn to be a character who doesn't get mad easily. Like, she's seen the worst of the worst. Not a lot bothers her, but someone standing in her way obviously would. So, quickly answer that. So, along with what I want to happen afterwards, it also gives me time to be like, okay, this is a good point to mention her past. Like, obviously we'll have the prologue with what I mentioned before, if I decide to add prologues. I don't know, prologues are kind of scary. I don't know why I don't. Anyways, but it allows her to mention it or just to think it. I think I want this to be in third person, so we don't really get her thoughts quite as much. So she's a mystery to the readers as she is to her crew and herself and me. But then I mentioned 2 other points that I'm like, these are important for the novel. I want them introduced early on. It gives me a good point to mention them right away. And then something else I like about starting with the action scene and why I chose to do it like this was because in a crew, everyone has their own roles. It introduces the characters, maybe not so much, but the roles. What people play in the crew, what she has as real people and not just the dead. It also introduced character relationships, which is very important for this. So then this is where I've gotten stuck so far, because after that first intro, I need to figure out lots of stuff that goes on in the middle and lots of stuff that goes wrong, which of course is really important. But instead of trying to do that, how about I start with how do I want it to end? I'm skipping the middle right now because I know how it ends. It's important to write what you know before you start trying to figure out what you don't, because what you do know would typically lead into possibilities for how it ends. Like if I did this and maybe I'm just writing my thoughts and I'm like, oh, it would be good for her to think this or for her to like act like this, and I'm like, oh, so then maybe something should happen earlier in the novel that makes her think that way or makes her act that way. You'd be like, oh, that's a plot point I could add in somewhere. And at this point, nothing is ordered. You're just creating plot points. You're thinking of things that could happen and you'll string them together later. This is why I call it word vomit, because it comes out in whatever order it wants to, and then later you can make it legible. And so this is also a big question, because like I said, I wanted this originally to be a series. So I had already kind of thought of what I wanted it to end like, but I can also play with the name. I'm gonna actually, in this, put TBD, because the name can be workshopped still. Look at other people's opinions on that too. If you're my friends, you've likely heard about all my stories before, so you will be hearing more about this one specifically. I wrote down how I know I want it to end. So yes, obviously, since I want it to be a series, the way I'm writing this, or the idea I had for the end, would logically lead into the next book. I'm thinking about what I want to happen in the next book, and I really do think it's better as a second book and not just the second half of this novel. I feel like the way this ends would be, yeah, it's pretty ending, like big revelation, and yeah. We need to emphasize her character flaw. So I already know what her character flaw is, kind of said it, but so the next question would be, what happens that shows her flaw? What scene could be added that would show her flaw? And that's pretty important that we know what's wrong with our main character, because obviously people are not perfect, and if they were perfect, they would be very, very, very boring. Nobody wants to watch a perfect person. People want to watch people struggle. It's really just how it is. And so once I figure out what I want this extra scene to be, it would lead into a plot point, obviously, and which would lead me to the questions, what happens before and what happens after? How do they get to that point? And what does that plot point lead them to? Because something else has to be given for them to get somewhere else. I cheated a little bit. I got this notebook. This is from high school, and this is where I first started writing about this. This, though, purely characters. So obviously once I found Evelyn, what I needed next was her crew. People that had a purpose for being there, that Evelyn could help them with. And so I created this. So now I'm reading over what I like for the characters' ideas, the ideas of the characters. and seeing if it could help me with the plot points. I do recommend doing that first, like before you start trying to plot your book. Figure out who's a part of it, because that'll also help you write your book. You got your main character. What do they want? Why don't they have it? Why do they want it? Why is it a struggle? And then villain, who's standing in the way of it. Typically your character has people helping them, so who's helping them? Why are they helping them? What are they like? Do they get along? That kind of stuff, because once you figure out how your characters are, how they act, hopefully it'll lead you to plot points in the novel. Also, a lot of these sentences start with maybe, like, oh, maybe this could happen, but if I'm unsure about it, I don't be like, this is gonna happen. I just put it out there. I write it down in case it want to happen, in case I want it to happen. Yeah, so I put a maybe down, and then I'm like, say that after they lose this thing, they dock and they go for drinks. Just setting the scene up. And I thought, because when she got angry at the other person for interfering earlier, that's her character flaw, that she... Pause. But that demonstrates her character flaw. And so I'm like, maybe I don't put that all right there in that scene. So I had the person interrupt, and then they dock, they go to the bar. Then the other crew comes in. They're joking, they're kind of teasing her, and she blows up. Again, not like her at all. He has no use for the relic, so he gives it back to her. But that also would be a point to like set up the fact that would like reintroduce the fact that you can't use it. So he's like, you may as well. You're taking care of these people for me, kind of thing. He's like a really flirty, carefree kind of person. Maybe I have him ask a question that follows us throughout the novel. Like, there's just one question the audience doesn't know, so maybe he asks it and she's refusing to answer it for the entirety of the novel. So after that, it was like, obviously this question, the answer is she doesn't want to talk about it. Like, I did the answer, and then the fact that it's something she never talks about. So the next question was, why does she refuse to talk about it? And it's basically just to put that distance between herself and somebody else, like to not let somebody have the power over her again, even if it's emotional. So then the next question would be, when does she tell them? And that's obviously, it'll be a pretty big skip, but if you create a question, you got to create the answer. It's again, like, she puts that wall up. Eventually, they have to know. Eventually, she has to tell them. So when does she create that now? And that'll be another plot point for later in the book. And so obviously, to tell someone her big secret, she's gonna be feeling vulnerable, but she also has to feel safe, that she can trust them. So that also leads to the idea of what happened before it. Yeah, so what happened beforehand that made her feel like she could tell them? I did also, I'm like, oh, this could be the scene. I added, wow, I'm so white, I'm glowing. I put a setting in. I'm like, she doesn't just blurt it out. It's not something she just blurts out. Something happened before to make her trust them more, and then another setting happened where she was comfortable, she was laid back, and so she ended up saying it when she was prompted. I do want this to be very early on in their trip. Like, it hasn't even been a year since the whole crew got together, so that's why she's still like not fully trusting everybody here. Like, she trusts them to be good people, but she still doesn't trust someone to have that information over her. Now, it would be really cruel if I added a traitor, but I like all my characters too much to do that so far, so thoughts, if I really wanted to be that mean. Okay. Yeah, so then what happened before that scene? Like, was it another fight scene? Like another action scene? That prompts more questions. But while I was writing that, a quote came to my head. So I'm going to write that down. It's important to write those too, because those create scenes in themselves and make the scenes feel more alive, especially Just if you get any good ideas, just write it down. You can interrupt it. It's word vomit. Okay, so that's done. Right, so I had the something that made her feel comfortable. The scene before the scene. Now I need the scene before the scene before the scene. Basically, I'm doing what leads to what, but I'm doing it backwards. I'm like, this is what I want to happen. How does that lead up to that? And eventually it'll connect, or I'll add a scene to connect them together. Okay, this is a very hard question. I asked myself, in answer to the question, I asked myself 2 other questions, and then I'm like, to answer those 2 questions, I was like, I could do this, or this, and then I'm like, oh, this one would probably make more sense, and then I was like, oh, but why does that make more sense? Why do they need to do that in the first place? And then I'm like, I couldn't think of anything. I'm like, oh, maybe it's not for any specific reason, but just things built up and they needed to go back there for something. But I don't like that. I don't like that nothing specific happens. It's too boring. Another thing, which is important when writing at all, is don't finish when you're stumped. Finish when you know what's going to happen next, because it's so much easier to start the next day if you know what you're starting with. Like, if I left off on this question now, I would come back another day and I would just stare at it. Because I don't know the answer now, I'm not going to know the answer then. Force out an answer, even if it's not very good, because then at least you have some sort of solution and you can move on, do more questions, and you can come think back to it another day when you have more answers to other questions, and that maybe something else connects to this. Because like I said, the plot points are not in order. These will be ordered later on. Maybe I find another plot point in like 2 days where I'm like, oh hey, maybe that can happen beforehand and lead into this plot point that I already made. Seriously though, how? What happens? Okay, I finally got an answer and I think I like it. Ah, goodness. Okay. So, basically what happened before, they had to go somewhere, but I'm like, why did they have to go there? Where are they going? And stuff happens, and they get, stuff happens, and some internal conflict a little bit because of all this, and some character bonding, and just a whole lot of stuff. But yeah, I was like, why do they have to go there? And that was like, what caused them to go there? And I'm like, yeah, because I'll let myself think about that a little bit more. That was really aggressive. So in terms of progress, that's where we are right now. But it's a lot of questions. A lot of plot points have come up. But I also like writing it out like this because you get some answers to how some people act in the novel as well. Like into the answer to that last question, I said like this could be how it ends, or it could go this way. And the only thing that changes is how a certain character acts. So I'm like, how do I want it to go? I'm not entirely sure how the characters are going to act, what their personality is going to be like. I only know their past and how they have met Evelyn. Alright, so we're back again. First off, this is the necklace that inspired this story. I wanted to wear it so I didn't forget to show you guys. Like I said, it's One Piece merch. it's not official, but yeah, it says One Piece on the back. So this is what inspired the relic, because I was obsessed with this necklace. I have no idea if that's focused. It doesn't look like it is, but you get the gist. The little wheel and the One Piece pirate in the middle. But I was obsessed with this necklace when I got it, so I was like, I wanted that. It largely, when I make a story based off of something I find, I look at it and I'm like obsessed with it. I think it's either really pretty or really cool, or it's just the style of it. It's just And so I'm like, I want that to be important. So I was like, how do I make it important? I write a story revolved around it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like some big thing like the relic here. But like in Project Princess with the floors, it could be just quite literally a scene that's inspired, and I could create the novel based off of that scene. Yeah, so that's the relic doesn't look like this now, like in the book, but this is the first thing that I found that I had liked it. It's just for the relic, even though it's a pirate that uses it, it looks a bit too much like it was meant for a pirate, which the relic wasn't. It's just a relic that happens to be used by pirates, so the relic's changed just a little bit. And so, since it is pirates and you're on the sea and she has an army of the undead, I want this to be a very action-packed novel. It's action, adventure, fantasy. That's the main themes I'm going with for this book. I did intend to have a romantic interest, mainly because I love romantic interests. For me personally, I read a lot of romance, but I have not gotten to how that's gonna work quite yet. Which would be another question once I get all of like this stuff back and forth figured out and I run out of questions, or maybe even when I'm stuck on a question, I can ask like, oh, maybe, because like I said, the love interest would be from a different pirate crew, so what happens where they need to get close, where they bond or whatever? Because obviously just being rivals isn't really going to lead to something, and just seeing each other once every 5 chapters, that actually really depends on how many chapters are in this book, but seeing each other only once in a while isn't going to do anything. But I'm still going off of these questions, so yeah. So they got in a fight with somebody else. Could ask why they got in a fight, if it matters who they got in a fight with, what did the other group want. Since this is my main character is a woman and she is the captain of the crew, I do think they are going to run into some like prejudice, like some, what's the word, some men who are assholes basically. And whereas some people will be scared of her because they have learned to recognize her as the pirate princess, other groups are like, I don't believe it. And so I think that's just what I want this group to be like. It's where they don't pick a fight for a specific reason, but it's just prejudice against the group. I do actually think the next best question to ask is why the 2 pirate crews get so close. Because what would make most sense, I mean, would be an alliance, that kind of, for them to work together. But then the big question, that's a big question, that's why. Because that would need to be set up earlier in the novel. But like I said, I had the rival group interfere with the very first scene, which is what Evelyn was after. Evelyn would not be happy about that. So why would she be pushed? Like, what would push her to then join this group? I'm just gonna start writing what I'm thinking and we'll see where this goes. Okay. So I came to a conclusion. Literally how I did that was I had the question and then I'm like, first line, something threatens both of them. I'm like, Then I said, this would be more likely, but why would this need this? I'm trying to censor this, but also make sense. I'm quite literally writing down the questions in my head, and I'm like, it helps me come to a conclusion better. Whereas well, if I'm just letting the thoughts swirl in my head, they don't really go anywhere. But if I put them down, it seems a bit more organized and it's easier to sort through. And that way you can read back, you know exactly what you're thinking. Because it's quite easy when you're just thinking to just forget. I say that a lot, but I can't emphasize how much that's true. If you haven't noticed, as I've been writing this, there are quite a few relics. And that is because, like we have the Atlantic and the Pacific, there are different seas or oceans in this world. And each sea has their own relic. Each sea is named their own thing. The Dead Sea, the relic to raise the dead. And then, how many seas are there? 7? I did write this out before as well. Did I? I hope I did. Because God, I would not remember. Ooh, I don't think I did. I think I wrote this story somewhere else as well. It may have been in my old everything notebook, because I definitely had the other, like the names of all the seas written down. Because I was judging one of the names, which I'm actually keeping that name. It doesn't match the other names, but it matches the relic that it goes with. The real question is, what relic goes with each sea? Because I named them, but at first I didn't have a relic to go with each of them. And then once I figure out what relic would be with each of them, I would then need to decide where each relic is. Is it with another crew? Is it with the government? Is it with a noble? Is it sunk into the bottom of the sea? Does the Pirate King have them? Like, was he collecting them before he went MIA? For the life of me, I can't find where I wrote this. I got my old everything journal. This is like a little bit more of something about the sea. I had this document online. Still does not tell me where the seas are. I know I wrote it somewhere, but where was it? I was literally reading about it the other day, like a couple weeks ago, but still. Okay, so that's a question I'm gonna have to skip until I find it, or either recreate it. I don't want to recreate it though, because I have created it before and it is somewhere. I just don't know where. Very annoying. I know where it is. It was in this notebook. The whole reason I wanted to write this book. I was on vacation a few weeks ago, and I brought this notebook just so I could have something to write in. And first thing I wrote in this book was something about the sea. And so I saw that, and I kind of started writing about it again. Those are the seas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seas. And these were the first questions I asked. First one being, what do I want to happen? The very basic question, because I had no idea what was going on in this novel. What are ways the Navy could interfere? What are they looking for? What's the reason? And then, do all the seas have relics? What are the relics for each sea? Because in this world, in case you haven't noticed yet, they don't actually have magic. It's the relics that give them magic. And another thing also gives them magic, but that's a secret. So now that I'm getting into the relics, it's making me think of where the rest of these relics are, what they're doing, who's using them, and it's given me ideas. So I do feel like now that I'm starting to get to the main point of this novel, I kind of feel like it's coming together more. I feel a bit more confident about this novel. And it's not that I wasn't feeling confident about it before. I knew it was going to be good, but I was like, I avoid plotting it a lot when I was younger or like when I first thought of this idea, because I just didn't think I could create a plot that would do it justice. But I feel like I'm doing good now, honestly. When I tried to plot it before, it just felt like the plot of the book was so different than the theme and like the characters of the story. I'm like, it doesn't work. And so I feel like this is going somewhere right now. It probably, I think the thing that changed it for me is the other relics. Because again, I only had Evelyn's relic to begin with, and I didn't think of why she had this relic or where this relic came from. So now that I kind of asked myself that, it's really feeling like a story now. I answered the question that I had there, and then I'm like, from that answer, I got an answer to a question I asked previously that I really wasn't sure about. That I had like put possibilities down, but I really wasn't certain of. I have one more question that will take up a lot of the filler in between adventure scenes. You know, I'm gonna leave it off on a question again that I can come back to, and it's really just one I gotta think of for a little bit. That won't be that hard. I feel like the other question will be harder, so I'll leave that for after I finish these questions tomorrow. So we're almost done. I think after today I might be able to say I'm finished. So I can't exactly remember how much I've told you as of yesterday, but right now I just need to add in a few other like little trials for them to go through in order to be able to get what they want, because it's never easy. So trials that are obviously meant to be difficult or to fail entirely. Some they get through, but at a cost. What's the cost, of course? And that's really all I have to think of today. As I'm doing this, I'm just going through the same thought process as I do for everything else. Like, I'm trying to think of trials, so I'm just writing down my thoughts. I'm like, oh, I think I want in this range of trials, like, maybe it could be something like this. This kind of seems like a cool setting. What would come up in that setting? That kind of thing. I don't know specifically what I want them to be like, but just asking myself these questions eventually brings me to an answer, whether I like it or not. It is something that comes up. If I don't like it, then what don't I like about it? Go in the exact opposite of that. That kind of thing. So it took a little bit, but I did this whole page is what I just did. So, and then I summarized it into plot points just to make it easier so I don't have to read through the whole thing later. So basically, right off the bat, I was like, 3 to 5 things. I want 3 to 5 things to happen before. Sorry, my mic died again. I can speak louder now though, because again, I am in the house alone. But back to the point. I wanted 3 to 5 things to happen, and I kind of had a scene in my head, like just the setting, and I'm like, that would be really cool, but what is that? Like, what would happen there? And so I'm like, I start just kind of putting out ideas until I find one that I like, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'll just do that. Started very simple, based off of like what it was they're looking for, what they need, and then created a setting based on that works with the setting I was thinking here. And then I'm like, what could they get from that would need to lead them to the next trial or whatever they need, whatever it's called. I did that until I got to the end, and it was pretty easy, pretty quick, since I already had like kind of my world built and I knew what was around there. But yeah, I mean, the details aren't worked out yet, but the bigger picture is there, and that's really what the goal was. So last question, how does it end? It was the 6th question I asked, and now I'm asking it again at the end because now I have more detail to add to it. So let's see.
Okay. I wrote a lot. Wow, that one question from how does it end was a lot. This is the answer. This was a little like scene that came into my head while answering this. Turns out, as I was answering that, I didn't want it to end there. I added a whole other scene, or whole other 2 scenes maybe. From what I've done this video, we started on this page here, did these 2 pages, did these 2 pages. This is where we started today, and then I did that. Obviously, everything's not quite in order. If you want it more organized than this, I would create like often I create like a point form of what happens after, like this scene, then this scene, then this scene, then this scene, because now I know what happens, but it's chaotic everywhere. And I will do that, but I'll do that right before I start actually writing the first draft, just to remind myself. Because I know I'm not gonna start writing the first draft right away. I will do it probably in the next few months, I'd say. But since I'm still working on Sidereal, I'm gonna keep my focus on that book, so I'm not so I don't have torn interests. The reason why I want to do it just before I start reading is so I can read through all of this again and I remind myself of the things I wrote. I'm so excited. Okay. With that done, that does mean this video is also over. Thank you guys for joining. That was so much fun. That was the first time I ever talked through my plotting process. Usually my brain's just a mess, so this helps me organize it, even though this is also a mess. But just writing it down keeps it in one place instead of floating everywhere in my head, if that makes any sense. Anyways, I hope this helped you guys. If you're plotting your book, I hope it goes well. I hope you are able to end up writing it. But for now, I will see you stars next week. All right, bye-bye.